Hello everyone. This is not a video that I expect will normally appeal to my regular subscribers. It will probably appeal to some of them because I know that a lot of my subscribers, being computer gamers, are probably into nerdy kind of stuff. But this is mostly a video for just anybody who happens to come across it and may be interested in doing something like this. This is a video that I want to make about making games in Adventure Game Studio that use text parsers. Now, Adventure Game Studio has had text parser support for years, but still not a lot of people are using it. I don't see a lot of games that make use of it. I haven't seen any tutorials at all, either on YouTube or on even just on the general web, about how to make a game that uses a text parser. And I thought I want to just make a video about that because it is something important to me. Those of you who've been watching my videos know that in the past I've ranted about text parsers in adventure games and how important they are because they allow you to commit verbs that are not covered by the half dozen icons that you get in a regular point-and-click adventure. Most adventure games give you just a few standard icons. You get walk, look, interact, speak, and that's pretty much it. Maybe a couple of others that are sort of specialized, but that's about it. Gabriel Knight's Sins of the Fathers was a pretty good... It broke out of that pretty well in that it had a lot more cursors than you'd normally have, but still there was still a set number of actions that you could perform. And I don't want to get too much onto a rant about it, but I did have the idea a long time ago of making an adventure game in which basically had both options. It had both the point and click and the text parser interface. And what you could do in this game, that, this is sort of in the back of my mind, I thought what I would do is I would have one puzzle in the game that required you to type in, to use the text parser to type in a particular verb, because there was a puzzle that required a very specific verb, which wasn't covered by the usual mouse cursor icons or cursors. And so that was sort of a... I don't know if it could be called, as people would say, a dick move, but it's the kind of thing that kids do. I was like 10 years old, or maybe a little bit older than 10, when I had this idea of making a game like this. Basically, you'd get through the whole game with pointing and clicking with the mouse, except for this one puzzle, just to make a point where you had to type in this one verb that you couldn't otherwise get without typing it in text. So I just wanted to sort of... Again, I wanted to make a point. I wanted to show that there are some things that you still need the text parser for if you want to do anything beyond just some very basic and obvious actions. But anyway, I didn't actually end up making that game, although I have played around with AGS a little bit over the years. But anyway, I don't want to get, like I said, I don't want to get it too much into a rant because this isn't an ideological video. This is a how-to video. This isn't a video about why you'd want to do this, but more just a video about how to do it. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and say start a new game, and I'll go ahead and start with the default game template. If you really want to be really Spartan and do everything from scratch, you can use the empty game template. That gives you absolutely nothing, but I find that the default game template is good to start with because this at least gives you, if nothing else, it gives you some mouse cursors. It gives you at least a mouse pointer. If you don't use this, you don't even have a regular mouse pointer to point with. You have to draw that cursor as well as everything else. So this at least gives you a basic sprite, which looks like Roger Wilco from Space Quest. It gives you a handful of functional mouse cursors and a few basic interface elements like that, which I find are good to incorporate. If there's anything here that you don't want, you can delete it later, but I find this is a good place to start from because otherwise you have to do literally everything from the beginning, and it's quite well, it's a little bit more work. If you want to do it that way, you can, if you really want to customize anything, but I find that this is at least a good starting point, and then from here you can move forward and tweak what you want. So we can go ahead and give our game a name. I'll just call it Parser Demo. Why not? And the file name can also be Parser Demo. And let's put it in a folder called Parser Demo. There's a pattern developing here, you might notice. All right, so let's go ahead and start. This is it. This is Adventure Game Studio. You can see I'm using Adventure Game Studio version 3.3. I think the exact version is, well, yeah, it's build 3.3.0.1164. That doesn't really matter too much. I made several years ago, I think about 5 years ago, or actually maybe probably even more than 5 years ago, I did make an adventure game with Adventure Game Studio that incorporated a text parser. And I just did it recently, again with this version with AGS, which is the latest version. A few interface elements have changed. Not much has changed, but there are a few things that might be different. So I'll point out some things that are different as we go along. But fortunately, Adventure Game Studio doesn't change too much as time goes by. I really hate it when software changes so much that you have to completely change how you do everything. And thankfully, AGS seems to be pretty good about not forcing you to change how you do everything every year or so. Anyway, so I want to emphasize this is just how I did things. There may be other ways of doing things, but this is how this is the way that worked for me when I made a short little demo game. I was just a very small demo of how to use a text parser, and I made it several years ago. So this is what works for me. If anybody has any advice or any ideas about how to do it differently, you're welcome to point it out, of course. But I'll go ahead and show what worked for me and what I did. So you want to start now that we have this basic stuff here. If you go here on the right-hand side here, what you'll probably want to start with is creating a GUI. So the default game template that we're using comes with 7 GUIs because they're numbered starting from 0. So, and these are basic things like here's a status line, which is meant to appear at the top of the screen and show you, I guess, probably your score or something like that. Icon bar, this is, as you can see, it's a Sierra-style kind of icon bar. You have your walk, look, interact, talk, inventory, cursors, save, load, exit, and so on. So what you want to do is create a new GUI. So if you right-click on GUIs, you can say New GUI, and here it is right here. And down here, I'm sorry if the interface is a little bit cramped. I have AGS shrunk down to a less than full screen window because my computer is not powerful enough to record a full screen video, unfortunately. So the interface is a little bit cramped in this context, so I apologize for that. But anyway, so here we have our GUI. And a GUI is basically, for those who don't know, it's basically just an interface element. It's just a window that pops up. For example, well, you saw the icon bar and the status line. This also comes with things like here's one to save your game in, and here's one to restore games in. So we're going to make one for our text input. The reason you need to make this is because okay, I'll give a little bit of background. So those of you who are familiar with the Sierra Adventure games and who've been playing Sierra Adventure games for many years, you might remember that in Sierra's really old adventure games, like King's Quest 1, actually King's Quest 1 through 3, and so on, the way that text input worked is there was an area at the bottom of the screen where your typed input would go, and you could type input there without getting in the way of the game. You could type something in there, you could type a command in there, and the game would keep running. Starting with Sierra's later adventures that ran under SCI, the Sierra Creative Interpreter, what happened instead was when you started typing in a text command, a box would pop up on the screen, and the game would actually pause. The game would pause, and this little box would pop up which you could type your command into, and the game wouldn't continue until you pressed enter and the box went away. As far as I know, you have to do it that way in AGS. I don't think there is an option in AGS to do it the sort of old-fashioned Sierra way and have it have your own dedicated area for text at the bottom of the screen. I believe you need to make a pop-up window to accept the typed text input. So that's what this is going to be. So let's go ahead, and the default name for this is GGUI1. Let's go ahead and give it a name like AGS, as you can probably see, it likes to name things beginning with it likes to name GUIs beginning with a lowercase g to indicate that it's a GUI element. So let's go ahead and retain that. You don't have to name things that way, but I guess it's just a convention so that when you have this object, you know it's a GUI and not something else. So I'll go ahead and keep the lowercase g, and let's just call it CMD line. Why not? All right. Now we have a GUI called GCMD line, and this is going to be our command line in the game. So the only thing that you really need to put in here is a text box. So I'll go ahead and put the text box here, just like that, and that's going to be where your text goes in when you start typing into the game. That's all you really need. If you want to make it look nice, probably you should at least add a label here. A label is a non-interactive element. It just shows some text. It just shows something in this GUI. So I'll go ahead, and we've got our label here. Let's go ahead and set the text of the label to enter command colon. There we go. So now, and let me also change, while I'm here, let me go ahead and choose the GUI itself here, and let me change the background color, because this background color is a little bit too dark for my liking. Let's go ahead and try, that works out pretty well. I like it to be a little bit gray. You could just make it plain white, of course, like that. I don't know, that seems a little bit too glaring to me. I don't like absolute white on computer screens. It kind of bothers my eyes. It seems a bit too bright to me. So I like it a little bit gray. Of course, you can change this in your game. You can change it to whatever you want. But for our demo, I'll go ahead and leave it at this. When you're making your own game, you can make it whatever you want. I'll also try to compress things a little bit, because you obviously don't want this GUI to be this big. You want it to be a lot smaller. So let me go ahead and actually come back to the GUI and find the height. So the height defaults to 200, which that's height in pixels. 200 pixels is a little bit ridiculous. I think we can make it a lot smaller than that. Let's try 50. Is that too small? No, I think that's probably pretty reasonable. Yeah, I think that's okay. And obviously that chopped off the bottom of the text box a little bit, but I can consolidate these things. And actually the text box doesn't need to be that tall. We can make it something like that. I want to make it long enough so that people can type in a longer and relatively complex command if they want to, but we can actually make this even shorter than 50 pixels, but this is fine. I'll go ahead with this for now. Obviously, again, you can tweak this in your game, but I'm just making a demo, so this is good enough for a demo. Oh, also, one thing that you want to do with this is change the visibility. So the visibility for a GUI by default is normal initially on. You want to change this to normal initially off, because you don't want this to normally show up on the game screen. You only want this to show up when somebody starts typing in text input. So you want this to be invisible at first and only become visible when somebody starts typing into the game. So that takes care of that. That's I think that's all the graphical element that we really need to worry about. Now we get into some scripting, and I know that some people might not like programming. I know some people are kind of averse to programming, and if you are, I'm sorry, I don't really think there's a way around this. If you're developing games, if you're making games with Adventure Game Studio, you probably are already familiar a little bit with the scripting language in the program. If not, if you're absolutely new to AGS, you've never used it in your life, and you want to start making an adventure game, I got to be honest, I don't think there's a way around this. You're gonna have to do a little bit of coding, and it's not too complex, but there is some programming language structure to learn. This global script.ash file, I think this is just the header script. You don't really need to worry about that. I'm not going to mess around with that. I can go ahead and close this GUI for the time being. What you do want to do is go to global script.asc, and this is the game's global script. Now, for those who don't know, what I mean by global script is that this applies to the whole game, as opposed to a room script. So, like, for example, if you come down here and look at the rooms, this default game template comes with one room, and there is a room script here, which means a script that applies only to that one room in the game. And a room is basically just like, I guess it should be pretty intuitive what I mean by a room, right? It's like, one screen of the game. So if you're in, let's say, you're in a kitchen, and then you walk off the screen to the right, then maybe you walk outside, or maybe you walk into, it could be a literal room in a house, or it could be that you go into somewhere outdoors. It doesn't matter. It just means it's a room in the game, which means basically like a screen of the adventure game. So each room has its own script, and if you want something to apply globally to the whole game, then you edit the global script, which you probably want to do. If you're making a text input interface, you probably want to put it in the global script, because it's going to apply to the whole game. I assume that the whole game will take text input, unless for some reason you want the text input to work differently from one room to another, but that doesn't really, I think in most cases you wouldn't, because that doesn't really make much sense to me. Of course, it's your game. If you want to be kind of artistic or avant-garde or different, you can, but you probably want your text parser to work pretty much the same way in every room in the game, so it goes in the global script. The global script is the most logical place to put that, because it applies game-wide. So we're here in the global script. What we want to do is find the text input portion. This is the onMouseClick function, so this is what the game does when you click with the mouse. But what we want to find is, interface click. I'll come back to that later. Yeah, this looks promising. This is the, okay, here we go. The onKeyPress function. So this is what the game does when the player presses a key on the keyboard. And basically the game will take a KeyCode function, which references the code for the key pressed. So let's come down here. This is for when people press escape. This is for when people press return. And this is, I'll go and put it here after pressing return. So let's see. So you can kind of use the text here as a template. If KeyCode double equals return, then then do that. So let's go ahead and put here. So okay, what we need to do to make the text input GUI appear is if the player presses any letter key, which basically means any letter from A through Z or Z, make the command line visible. Now, the only way that I figured out how to do this, and there may be another way to do this, there's probably a better way to do this, but the way that I did it, which is kind of a hack, but it's the most obvious way of doing it, is to say if KeyCode equals a certain letter. Now, in AGS, the code for the letter A is 65. So what this is basically saying is if the KeyCode is 65, which means the player pressed A, then make that command line GUI visible. Remember, we called the command line GUI CMD, yeah, there we go, GCMD line. So this takes a property called visible. So we'll go ahead and say GCMD line dot visible equals true. And what I also want to do, since this is, I'll put a comment here to indicate this is for the letter A. Because the user typed A on the keyboard, we want to put the letter A into the command box. Now, hold on, what's the name? What did I name the, if we come back here to our GCMD line GUI, what's the name of this text box? Wait, no, that's the label. Actually, let me make that label smaller. That label doesn't need to be that big. Okay, here's the text box, and oh, actually, we should call it something more logical than text box 1. Let's call it CMD box. Yeah, I think that's what I called it, because this is the box that actually will take the player's command. So what we want to do then is say CMD box, and then change the text property to equal A. And I think that's it. I think that's all that we have to do. If you want, you can, it might be more logical to make it a lowercase a, because people are more likely to, I actually don't know if there's a way to trap uppercase versus lowercase letters. It seems like AGS doesn't distinguish between those two. People are probably going to be using lowercase letters, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Anyway, okay, so let's go ahead and test this out now. If you press F5, the game runs, but because I'm running in a small window here, by default, if you run the game without building it first, you don't have the option of changing the resolution, and it tries to run almost full screen. So what I'll want to do in this case, you won't need to do this in real life necessarily when you're doing the game yourself, but because I'm filming this in such a small window, what I want to do is build an exe out of the game. And okay, compile was successful. So now what I can do is I can come here to setup, run the game setup, and what I want to do is choose to run in a window without a filter. I don't want to magnify it, I just want to do no filter, and this will run it in the actual default size, which I believe is 320 by 200 resolution. Here we go, that looks good. Okay, so here we go. So this is our demo, and if things are working out as planned, then I can press A on the keyboard, and that should make our GUI pop up, our GUI pop up. And yes, it did. Enter command. So when I pressed A, that turned the command line GUI visible, and it put a letter A in the in the text. And of course I can delete that. I can press backspace and type whatever I want. But that's basically it. So now our GUI appears when we press A. Now we have no way of getting rid of it. There's no code to make the command line invisible. So I'll have to close the game by clicking on this Windows close button up here. Also, let me get rid of that that status bar in the background. This default game comes with the status line at the top, and the visibility for this is initially on. Let me set that to initially off, because I don't want that to show up there. I don't use that. So let's try running the game again. You can press F5 to run the game. And there we go. Now the status bar is not up there. This we can also get rid of, actually. I'm indifferent to this icon bar. I'm not going to be using it, but if you want to turn that off, you can also set the visibility for that to off. But again, if you press A, yep, that brings up the GUI. So far, so good. So what I did, and this is kind of a hacky way to do it. I don't know if this is the best way to do it. Probably not. But basically, I created these 4 lines 26 times, one for each letter of the alphabet. So basically, all I changed was the key code to reflect the actual key code for whatever key was being pressed, and then I changed this letter here to reflect the actual letter that the player typed in. So, for example, down here would be if key code equals. I apologize. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what the key codes for each letter are. I think actually there's an alternate way of doing it. Yeah, I think you can do something like this. You can do if key code equals apostrophe letter apostrophe. Let's try this. I think this is an alternate way of doing things, actually. Let's try doing this for B, because I think that you can do this now, at least in newer versions of AGS. Maybe I couldn't do this in the version of AGS that I was using several years ago when I was doing this the first time. But let's try this now. So GCMD line visible equals true. CMD box text equals B. End of if statement. Let's go ahead and try running this. So now if I press B, yeah, okay, good. So that's maybe an easier way of doing things than using these numeric key codes. So you can do this for A, B, C, all the way to Z or Z. So now we have a way to make our command input box visible when we start typing in text, but we need a way to make it invisible. We need a way to get rid of it. So what you can do then is in here, so this is the code that handles return or enter. In this case, in the default template, it basically just confirms restart. So basically it says if the restart GUI is visible, then confirm that you want to restart. I don't think it's used for anything else here. So something a little bit weird. For some reason, I don't know why this doesn't work for me. I'll go ahead and show you what I did. So what I naturally did was if GCMD line visible, then GCMD line visible equals false. As far as I know, this should work. This is basically saying, so, okay, this line says if you press enter while the restart dialog is visible, then yes, restart the game. If you press enter while the CMD line, while the command line GUI is visible, then make the command line GUI invisible. Set its visibility property to false. However, this didn't work when I tried it. So if we try it now, so we've got the GUI coming up here, and now if I press enter, nothing happens. I don't know if I did something wrong with my code. I don't know if somehow, I don't know. I really don't know what's going on there. As far as I know, that should work. So what I ended up doing is I used the obsolete function down here, which I think I touched on just a moment ago, called, yeah, interface click. Now, I gotta be honest, I don't know exactly what the interface click function is for. This is what I used when I created that game that I talked about several years ago. As you can see, the code says this function is now obsolete, beginning with AGS version 2.62. However, it's what I used back then, and like I said, I'm going to show you what I used several years ago when I created an adventure game. I have no idea where you're supposed to put this code now. If any AGS guru is watching this, feel free to let me know in the comments, and I might put it in the video description. But for now, this still works. At least the basic code should remain the same. Maybe you put it in a different place in the new version of AGS. I didn't figure out where you're supposed to put it, but this at least, it should work for now. So what I'll go ahead and do is, I don't actually know what interface click means or what it does, but it seems to basically trigger if you, I don't know, I'm actually not sure what this triggers on, but this seems to trigger after you press enter. So what I'll go ahead and do is I'll say gcmd line visible equals false. And that should be it. Now, if we try running the game, and I'll go ahead and type something in. Now, if I press enter, yeah, now that works. Now, so somehow when you press enter, this function triggers. Don't ask me why. Again, if anybody wants to explain it, feel free to do so. I'm not going to dwell on it too long. I just want to show you at least the basic code to make this work. When I made my game several years ago, I put a wait statement here. I don't remember why I did that. I don't know if this was required or if it's still required for proper processing of user input, but I had it there and I don't necessarily want to question it. So it waits for one game state, which isn't very long at all. So I'll go ahead and leave that there, even though it may or may not be required. And now what you want to do is run the parse text function, and this takes one parameter or one argument, which is the obviously the text that these are typed in, which is cmd box text, the text property of the cmd box text box. So this will parse the text in the command box, whatever the gamer typed in. And there are a couple of functions, there are a couple of stock functions that you're supposed to put in here. I guess you don't have to, but it helps. These are, I'll show you what you're supposed to put in. So you create a string, which I think in the template text it's called bad word. Of course you can call it whatever you want, but why not? I'll just type it in as is. So the bad word string is set if the parser got an unknown word, basically a word that the game doesn't recognize. And so what this line says is if the parser got a word that it doesn't recognize, then it will put that word into a string called bad word. This doesn't mean bad words as in swear words. This means bad words as in just, not recognized words. Now what we want to do is put an if statement that says if bad word isn't null. So basically what this means is if bad word has any value. If the player didn't type in any unrecognized words, then bad word should be null. But if bad word is not null, then let's display a message saying something like, I'm sorry, but I don't understand the word. And now you'll need to use the syntax that is probably familiar to C programmers. You put in a sort of a placeholder. I forget the proper name for that. I think there's some technical name for that, but this is basically a placeholder for a string variable. And then here at the end you specify the name of the string that you want to put in there. So what this should do then, actually, we can try it out right now. But basically what this is saying is this turns the command line GUI invisible. It parses whatever the user typed in. If the user typed in anything not recognized, then basically show a message that says, I'm sorry, I don't understand that word. So let's go and test this out. Let's go ahead and run the game. And I'll go ahead and type in some gibberish. Aha, it works. I'm sorry, but I don't understand the word, the thing that I typed in. Okay, good. So far, so good. So we're almost there. Now we just need to put in the parsing. And you can do that, I don't know if there's a better way to do this. I just used a huge load of else ifs. So you can say else if parser said. Parser said is basically what the what you get out of the text parser. So, for example, if the player typed look, which is a fairly basic adventure game text-based command, right? So if the player typed look, then display a message saying, I don't know, you don't see anything, or you can be funny and say, you are in the game. It's just a silly little message to respond to the look command. So let's try that now. Let's make sure that that works. So I can't actually type L. Oh, in fact, you know what? This default game template comes with a function that actually, if you press L, it actually switches you to the look cursor. You can see my cursor change to an eyeball instead of the walk that it was before. So I think W sets you to walk, L sets you to look, and probably there are other T makes you talk. And there are probably others as well. If you want to make a proper text parser, obviously you'll need to rip those out. You'll need to delete those key presses and make your own, because you'll need the text input to trigger on any letter. But anyway, because I don't have the code yet to bring up the text input based on pressing L for look. If I want to type look right now, what I'll have to do actually is press either A or B, because those are the only two letters that I've coded to bring up this command box. Then I'll need to backspace over the A or B, and now I can type look. Oh, I didn't add look to the understood words. So what you also need to do in Adventure Game Studio is come to where is it? To text parser. And here in text parser, if you right-click on this list of words, you can say add new word. You need to add a word here that the game understands. So I just added look. Okay, so this will basically tell the game that look is on the list of understood words. Now let's go ahead and run the game again, and now it should work. And again, I need to press either A or B to bring this up, then backspace for the A or B. Now I can type look. You are in the game. Awesome. And of course, you can change that message to be whatever you want. That's just some message that I typed in there, but you can change this to be whatever you want. And you can put other commands. You can put in parameters, like if you want to say look at the cat, you can say look cat. And I think the text parser, yeah, these are, by default it has a list of ignored words. So basically all these words like all, at, all of these are completely ignored. They have no effect on the parser, which means that if you type them, they don't change the result of the command. So if you type look at the cat, at and the by default are both ignored words. So look cat is the same as look at the cat, because at and the are both ignored. I think if you actually, hold on, let me go ahead and just try this real quick. If I type in something like at the, yeah, nothing happens. The game doesn't even say anything, just because it just ignores both of the words that you typed in. So, okay, but look is now a normal word. It's a regular word that the game recognizes. So if you go ahead and say look cat, then this will match things like look at the cat, look at cat, look the cat, or just look cat. What you can also do is use an ROL. ROL is, I think it shows up here actually, wasn't it? Yeah. Here's its rest of input. ROL stands for rest of line. So what you can do is put in a something like, so for example, because this is a game which allows you to walk around with the mouse, if the player tries to type in something like walk, for example, what you can do is say walk ROL. And what this will do is this will match anything that the player types after walk. Then you can just say display just walk there yourself. I hate it when games say this because it seems like sort of a snarky thing to say, but it's kind of applicable in this case. So let's try this now. So if I... Oops, I think I made a typo. Oh, Oh, it's case sensitive apparently. I typed in a uppercase A instead of a lowercase a, and it got snippy with me. It said said is not recognized. Okay, so now if I try to type in, whoops, if I try to type in walk anything, it should say, oh, it doesn't understand walk. Okay, I'll have to add that to the text parser as well. Okay, add new word. The word is walk. Okay, let's try that again. So now, here we go. So now if I type in walk something, oh, it tells me it doesn't understand the word because the, of course, like any traditional programming language, it runs these lines in order, and the code here to handle an unrecognized word comes before the code for walk ROL. So I need to use, so if there's any unrecognized word, it'll harp on the unrecognized word first. So I need to use an actual recognized word. I don't have any nouns. Okay, it doesn't matter. I'll go ahead and show you. Basically, because I have a walk ROL there, I can go ahead and say walk any recognized word, and it should work. So I can say walk, walk, walk. That doesn't really make much sense, but in this case, I hope you understand what I'm saying. The point is that because I put in walk ROL, it doesn't matter what I type after walk. I can type walk anything. I can type walk, look, any recognized words, any words that the game recognizes, as long as I don't have an unrecognized word, then walk anything will basically give you this response. Just walk there yourself. So, what else can you do? Since there is a we are creating a game with a text parser, I did want to add a quit command, enabling the player to type in quit. So you can also say if parser said quit, and you can use an OR statement here, which is two pipes. If parser said quit or parser said exit, so basically if the player typed quit or exit, and then you can just use the quit game function, quit game, and I believe, yeah, and then this takes an argument, prompt user or not. So I'll go ahead and use an argument of 1, which will prompt the user, do you really want to quit? So let's try this out now. Again, I'm still going to have to press A or B to bring up the command prompt window, but now if I type in quit, oh, derp. Once again, I keep forgetting. I have to add these to the text parser so the game will recognize them. Okay. Add new word quit, and while we're here, add new word exit so that our two commands will work. Okay, let's try this now. Try again. Okay, so now if I type in quit, yep, now it asks me, are you sure you want to quit? Nice. Okay, good. So that's pretty much it. If you obviously want to have a default for when the game doesn't understand what you said, so you can just put at the end, you can say else display I'm sorry, but I don't understand your command. And that's it. So now if I type in so this should work if I try to look at something, for example, because this line only recognizes the exact command look. But if I try to look at something, if I try to put in any other word to look, for the look to operate on, it should fail and say, I'm sorry, I don't understand your command. So if I just say look, it says you're in the game. But if I say look, for example, I'm sorry, but I don't understand your command. So basically, what you'll need to do is, there are probably some tricks for, I mean, obviously if you're going to make a whole game and put in a recognizable text command for each desirable function in the game, you'll probably want to put in some tricks to sort of make this easier to program. But basically, yeah, you'll need to put in every recognized command in the game. And this, again, this is the global script, so these are things which will probably apply globally. So things like walk and quit, those will probably work similarly throughout the entire game. Look, obviously, you'll want to make that into a room script, not put that in the global script. So you'd want to not use this line here. You'd want to put this in a room script rather than the global script. And actually, I think what you can do is probably what you want to do, actually, instead of what I've done here, is I think what you can do, is say at the end, else call room script. And actually, I wonder what this, what this value should be. Does this correspond to the room number? I'm not sure. I apologize. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure what this should be. I don't know if this needs to be the number of the room script. But anyway, what you'd want to do, what makes sense to do, is have the global function take care of global commands like quit, restart, any commands that will function exactly the same anywhere in the game. Then at the end, you want to have this script called the room script. And then down here in the room script, you want to put in whatever functionality would apply to this room. And then at the end of the room script, have a catch-all that says something like this: I'm sorry, I don't understand your command. That basically means that both the global script and the room script failed to get anything useful out of the command, and so just abort with a general display: I'm sorry, I didn't understand your command. That's pretty much it. So assuming that I put in functions for all the letters of the alphabet, at this point in time we would have a functional game which combines the mouse point and click interface with typed commands. So, I've got my character here. I can walk him around with the mouse. I can also walk him around with the keyboard. I do like that AGS gives keyboard movement control with the arrow keys like that. I can look at things if I want. I can use the mouse to look at. There's nothing there, but if I click on myself, damn, I'm looking good. But if I want to type something, if I'd rather do something with the text parser instead, I can just type something in and say, look, and get a response and have some things happen based on what I put in the script. Also, if you want to move that, one other thing. If you don't like the way this, the location of this GUI, see right now it shows up at the top of the screen. If I go back to the game quickly, see right now it's there at the top. Maybe you want to have it show up at the bottom. I think, let's see, for that, I think you would, you'd change the left and the top properties. So let's make the top, what resolution are we using here? I think it's 320 by 200. So if I make this, hold on, what's the height? Only wait, seriously? Oh, sorry. Oh, these are the properties for the text box, not for the whole GUI. I'm sorry. No, I want to change the properties for the whole GUI. Here we go. So here we go. Here we set the left and the top. So let's go ahead and make the top 150, I guess, because that'll put it at the bottom of the screen, right? So now, there we go. Now it's at the bottom. And you can make it smaller as well. Like I said, you can make this GUI smaller because it's right now it's taking up a rather, I don't know, it's not that huge, but you can chop off the bottom part of it. I think that would be appropriate probably to do in this situation. So that's it. We have a working text input interface. We have a working text parser in our game that we can use to type text commands into the game, but at the same time, we can still use the mouse interface. This is, to me, this is the ideal adventure game interface, in my opinion, because you can do everything. You can move around with the arrow keys on the keyboard if you want to. You can type commands with the keyboard if you want to do things with the keyboard with text input. Or, for those who prefer point and click, you can still use the mouse. You can still use the mouse and use all this interface up here. You can point and click at everything you want, and it will work just like that out of the box. So I really believe that an adventure game that wants to give everything, that kind of wants to be accessible to people should include both of these. I realize I'm in a minority here because most people prefer point-and-click interfaces, and for most people, it's like, why would you even want to do this? Why would you even want to put a text parser into an adventure game? It's so much simpler to use point-and-click. Well, my opinion is, yeah, it is simpler, but I don't know, why do people read Shakespeare as opposed to Tom and Jane? I mean, yeah, Tom and Jane is simpler, but that doesn't mean that it necessarily satisfies everybody's literary desires. So it's kind of like, I'm not necessarily saying that that you have to be some sort of elite highbrow smartass to use the text parser. I just think that it's more flexible. I just think that there's more that you can do with it. Because again, how much can you do with this? You have 1, 2, 3. You basically have 3 things that you can do here, and then whatever is in your inventory. That's it. So you have 3 basic actions that you can perform on any object in the game. What if you want to use a less common verb? I don't know. I've talked about this before. I think I've beat the point into the ground enough. I don't want to get too preachy in this video, so I'll go ahead and leave it at that. That's it. I guess this is the end of the video then. So I hope that this has clarified how you incorporate a text parser into an Adventure Game Studio game. Like I said, this may change from one version of AGS to another, but I think that it should stay pretty much the same, pretty similar across versions. So yeah, I hope that this was enlightening for at least somebody. I hope that somebody someday might be able to make use of this, even if it's somewhere relatively far distant into the future. So thank you for watching, everyone. I hope that once again, I hope that you enjoyed, and I hope it was useful. And yeah, I'll talk to you folks later. Bye bye for now.